Poke646, a prominent name in the ever-so-alive Half-Life modding scene that many of you may have heard of but don't know a lot about. It's one of the few mods that fully convert the art style of Half-Life and is also set in a pretty unique time, a total of 13 months after the events of Half-Life 1. Today I'm here to review, summarize and analyze this mod and let you know why it's considered such a classic. If you're planning to play the mod, I want to give a fair spoiler warning as I will be telling the full story of both mods here. Before we do that, consider subscribing and joining the Discord. To give a bit of background on Poke646, the original mod released in 2001. Yep, that is a total of 22 years ago now. This mod is older than I am. It also, unlike a ton of mods in that era, got a sequel. It released a total of 5 years later in 2006 called Poke646 Vendetta. Furthermore, in 2016, we got Poke646 Anniversary Edition, which combined both the first and second game into a singular download. This is also the exact version I'll be talking about today, which, by the way, if I'm reading this correctly, doesn't even have a total of 20,000 downloads? What the hell? Anyways, let's boot up the game. The intro of Poke646 explains a bit of backstory while also showing off some of its unique environments. We see a news article talking about the alien invasion that took place 30 months prior. It explains that the Black Mesa research facility has been shut down. The nation never got to know anything about the experiments there. The less you know, the less you worry. We also get an explanation as to what Poke646 means. The government founded a new organization to handle alien-related topics. They hired the best scientists, technicians and military forces worldwide. Its name is Poke646. Poke646 thus being a name for a military that takes care of the alien invasion. Some days ago, the Poke646 scientists spotted alarming signals from the Zen homeworld. It looks like the aliens plan to invade Nation City by opening a massive amount of portals. But the Poke646 tech labs are already prepared. Some months ago, the technicians developed a huge generator which is able to close hundreds. Quick pause, you couldn't notice yet, but this right over here is our dear protagonist Damien Reeves. Where was I? The technicians developed a huge generator which is able to close hundreds of portals at once with a bundled energy beam. 4 generators are about to be installed at the edges of Nation City. With all 4 activated, they will form a giant beam and hopefully destroy the alien portal technology forever. Damien Reeves, the technical assistant of Dr. Fuller, doesn't know all these details. All he's currently worrying about is where the hell he lost his car keys when suddenly... Pretty goofy start, but still a good one. Once we wake up, a total of 3 hours later, we find that we are the only one left in this place. We also get introduced to a pretty important object here, the IUIC, which stands for Info Unit IC. I have no idea what IC stands for. With this thing, we can receive messages from info units. Specifically, we can contact our superior, Dr. Sebastian Fuller. He says that they must have somehow forgotten him while evacuating the city. The mission failed because they failed to activate the generators in time. The alien forces have already opened hundreds of portals. Our only way to escape here now is by activating all 4 generators and to defeat the alien breed. We are now the only hope to save the human race. I think this is a really good start. While obviously the use of cutscenes that take you out of the player's view in a Half-Life mod meant to be set in the Half-Life universe is questionable, I don't mind it too much here. I think this intro does a perfect job at setting up the mod in multiple ways. It, for one, obviously sets up the backstory. It also sets up the info unit system, and then sets up our objective for the mod. I also really like the fact that it's 4 generators and not just 1. For one, this makes the story a bit more interesting than simply just being a one-path story. And 2, it gives a sense of progress every so often. Each generator you start is a small win. Also, the game features its own custom soundtrack. It's actually pretty great. And it's also mostly what you'll be hearing throughout this video. This first section consists of you needing to start the generator in a room filled with weird architectural choices. Who the fuck placed a pipe there? I do like that it's actually interactable though, even if not the correct path. We do start up this generator and then get our hands on our first weapon, the pipe. What's interesting to note about this melee is that, unlike the crowbar of our infinite endurance hero Gordon Freeman, the protagonist does get tired when using this one. If you swing for too long, the swings will become fewer and lower damage. While I do appreciate this detail for realism, I really dislike it gameplay-wise. Just waiting for your only melee to recharge to destroy loot crates, resulting in you simply standing there waiting for the pipe to recharge, isn't really that fun. But it's a unique gimmick nonetheless. We then start moving outside and get to explore the environments of Nation City. This is what most of this mod is about, and I can't possibly overstate how great the aesthetic of this mod is. I think it's best described as a mix between the aesthetic of Half-Life 1 and the Half-Life 2 beta with a sprinkle of Counter-Strike. It's also got this great color palette. I'm no expert on color palettes, but it's all kinda like in a non-saturated green and blue color scheme for the most part. Perhaps an art major in the comments can describe it better than I do. Hell, I can't even recognize the numbers in images like these. We fight off against our first couple of headcrabs and Vortigons and then receive a staple of what defines Poke646, the nail gun. At the end of the day, it is kinda just a pistol reskin, but it's such a creative one that you simply have to love it. It's also so iconic. Whenever you think of Poke646, you think of unique weapons, and specifically this one. And I can't overstate this enough. This mod looks seriously awesome, and as I can't overstate it, I will reiterate it as many times as I deem fit throughout this video. The level design is also generally just done really well here. For example, in this one part here early on, There are quite a bunch of paths you can take. I think when totaling up the amount of ways one experiences this level, depending on where you go first, you'd end up with like 10 to 20 different variants. While also very slightly confusing, as it is often not seen in Half-Life mods, it is pretty cool. We find our next IUIC message, which reminds us that alien activity is high in the area, and reminds us of our goal of activating all the generators. There's also said to be weaponry nearby, which is exciting. This time it's an automatic nail gun. It shares its ammo with a semi-automatic one, which is cool. Again, basically only a reskin of the pistol and MP5 from Half-Life 1. We then move through some sewers and fight the Ichia, Guerrero, the Minasaur. You'll notice that this mod does a pretty good job at fitting in basically all enemies seen in Half-Life 1 and its maps. We also receive a new weapon here, Dynamite. It's also a reskin of the satchel, though it does do something great here. Were you ever confused on if you need to left or right click after you've placed down the first satchel using left click? Especially given that Black Mesa, the Half-Life 1 remake, flipped the controls of this. In case you're new here, in Half-Life 1, the satchel is a detonatable explosive weapon. After you place down the first explosive using the primary fire button, you can now either press the primary fire button again, which would detonate the explosive, or press a secondary fire button to place another satchel. Valve for some reason thought that switching what button places a satchel midway was a good idea. I believe Poke646 greatly fixes this. In this mod, the Dynamite view model switches to the player holding their finger over the detonate button, which just so happens to be on their watch, which clearly tells the player that the next click will detonate it. You can now still press the secondary fire button to place down another explosive. It's just a lot less likely that you end up blowing yourself up now. Hey there from the edit. Here's an interesting turn of events. Half-Life 1 just received a content update for the first time in ever. It's the 25th anniversary update to be exact. In this update they fix exactly what I mentioned here. So now left click always throws a satchel and right click always detonates it. I would say Valve please fix, but for once they actually did. The mod is also pretty hard. To record footage for this video I played it in easy difficulty, and even then I struggled quite a bit. We then find what is my favorite weapon of this mod, the Mutant Rat. It's basically the spore launcher from Opposing Force, but it's a mutant rat, and you reload it by feeding it. Yeah, it's pretty great. We find the second generator and manage to activate it. The third generator is in a bunker placed under the Nation City Library. By the way, you can read letters you find on the ground or wherever, which is fun world building and also often used to progress or give you hints. Like for example, we learn that we need to follow the pipes in this underground sewer labyrinth. Also, Jump Toad! And yeah, it's actually evil here. It's kinda just the Hopper mine from Half-Life 2. Do note though that Half-Life 2 released after this mod. Once you step in the puddle of the Jump Toad, it will jump up and explode. Interesting. I don't like that this is just thrown at the player's head. I can't help but imagine that very most people died when they first saw the Jump Toad. Since it's just kinda cute and you immediately approach it and crouch down to it and then boom! I would have recommended to go with the usual show don't tell Valve way of explaining what it does. Perhaps have the player watch through a vent as a zombie moves towards one and explodes. Actually, they kinda do this. I missed the fact that this game has a training course. It's actually really well designed, and it also explains the Jump Toad. It also explains that IUIC actually stands for Info Unit Identity Card. But my point still stands. They needed to somehow introduce the Jump Toad in the actual campaign, not just the optional training course. But better than nothing, I guess. Speaking of meh level design, as I've said, we get told to follow the pipes, through which you will come to find that the path there just collapses. Now you'll most likely end up running back and forth a billion times before seeing that the actual path consists of this ladder right here. It has the exact same texture as the back road and just emerges out of the rocks. What the hell were they thinking? This was more effort than to just simply place a usual ladder texture here, but I digress. Afterwards it does something that I love, which is having the player arrive at places they previously saw but were inaccessible, and having a view at the place you were at previously. Just gives a cozy vibe and a feeling of accomplishment. We then get to this area of the town, which kinda looks like a CS 1.6 map, specifically one from Condition 0. It's a tiny bit of open world. I must mention that I am deeply in love with the attention to detail in this mod, like for example a stapler being ammo for the nail gun. It's just so creative. We also receive our next weapon here, the crossbow. It's got slightly reworked looks and now sports a distance measurer, otherwise it's basically the same. We're then climbing across the side of a building, sneaking alongside tentacles. Seeing the tentacles in the middle of a city is kinda cool, I must admit. But I generally dislike this part. As for one, sneaking alongside this thin line is not really intriguing in any sense. Why would both the physical player of the mod and the player in lore decide to climb along here? There's also a very inconveniently placed alien controller around the corner here, which you will of course have to shoot, thus leading to you being insta-killed. What you have to do is kill it and then immediately follow that by throwing a piece of dynamite down below and blowing it up. That's at least how I solve this. We're then in this bar that looks pretty cool and find our next weapon, the shotgun. It's a double-barreled one and it packs a damn good punch. It also causes the player to fly back a little, which is usable for jumps actually. I absolutely despise this level though. Okay, so get this. You're on this road and the way is blocked by obviously or completely impenetrable barricades. Definitely not something you could just slide under. But you know, as a lot of open world games do this, I'm fine with this. It's just clear messaging that this area is inaccessible. It's kinda an unwritten rule that this simply means inaccessible and also kinda admits defeat of the developers in most cases. Like, yeah, we didn't have any idea what to add here, so just take this barricade. Which is fine, as it is pretty hard to think of ways to block off something in a semi-open world. You then find a code to open the path up to this window. So now what? Well, you can climb alongside this ledge, but we'll meet a dead end at this sign. What you really have to do is climb out this window, jump down on this ledge, and then move past the barricades. What the f***? You know, as I've said, I'm fine with not perfectly logical barricades in semi-open world environments. But to actually have this function as something that the player is supposed to believe is only passable by means of this small ledge is absolutely mind-baffling. I have no idea who was in charge of this, because it honestly feels like someone else made these levels. This part specifically made me so incredibly frustrated. Why not just place a bit of a higher wall of rubble there and have the ledge be a bit higher close to the window? Why was it solved the way it was? After this we finally make it to the library and yo, real-time parallax corrected reflections. Forget any critique I had for this mod. No, but seriously, this is really cool. It's actually quite a simple trick to do this in any engine that features transparency basically, but it's rarely seen made use of and it's hard to get looking real good. I think this is a perfect use case and did make it look perfect. The library is a fun bunch of levels. I love how it's an entirely new environment, but it still manages to stick to the previous atmosphere Poke646 managed to set up. I did get lost a couple times though. We eventually find the entrance to the secret bunker here. After looking around for a couple of keycards and finding a kingpin alongside other Card Half-F1 enemies in the lab, we eventually start the third generator, to which we receive a new message over the IUIC. Dr. Sebastian Fuller lets us know that the worst case scenario is taking place. The Poke646 military headquarters have deemed fit to try and take over the city because of the 3 generators being activated. The orders are to shoot on sight and they will most likely be trying to kill us as well. Thankfully, however, the tank has been sent to the bunker surface exit, which will pick us up and give us a safe ride to our HQ. I'm sure that won't go wrong. I like the idea of this plot twist though, our very clear goal of starting up 4 generators suddenly taking away from us, for what seems to be an earlier ending. However, as you may expect, this won't go the way it was planned. We see the guy that was sent to pick us up. Incidentally, also the very first person we see in this mod in general besides the intro cutscene. This person does however get eliminated alongside the tank, thanks to a gargantua. So double twist. We find another IUIC and the new plan is to actually activate the 4th generator in order to show the military that they don't need to swarm and basically destroy the city. We can't get there by foot, so we will take a train in the subway. We are warned that high military activity is going on there. We then try and dodge the gargantua as we climb along more tight ledges, which again, kinda make gameplay. Also, They Hunger For movie, which is a fun reference. By the way, I am really skipping between the story beats here. Up until this point this has been like 4 hours of gameplay. As I said, I can't state enough how great all of these levels are. There's simply nothing worth of note in them, other than that they are really great. The gameplay and level design for the very most part is incredibly great as well. So let's skip another 15 minutes to the train station. This is where we first encounter the military, and let me tell you, these guys are a hard fight. Even on easy. We find the train, but the power has been disabled. On our way to get it working, we come across what might be the greatest moment in gaming. We do get the train to start, at which point an interesting, albeit short section of gameplay begins. The train is set to crash into a wall in 5 minutes. In that time we have to reach the rearmost wagon and decouple it from the rest of the train. I really like this section where signs are hanging from either the walls or ceiling that the player has to then dodge. Sadly, these signs come from behind the player. This obviously makes sense as the train isn't driving backwards and you couldn't have the player decouple the front wagon from a logical perspective. Unfortunate, but it's still a cool concept nonetheless. The train does also actually crash as soon as we reach the last wagon and manage to disconnect it. Pretty great for a Gold Source mod. We find another IUIC that notes that the last generator is nearby, but that the path there is filled with explosives. We fight across rooftops in what I think is pretty great level design on all fronts, and reach a harbor-like area. We hear explosions in the distance, which is a great way to remind the player of the explosives in an environmental storytelling way. We see large battles taking place between the military and Zen aliens, and then come across a real weird area. Now, as I've mentioned previously as well, sometimes it feels like certain bits were done by other level designers. This is one of those bits. There is this part of the level where you run through a bit of a maze of containers and occasionally there is spilled radioactive goo that makes you take damage. Now this sounds great in concept, however, you have no choice but to be forced to take damage here. This is basically never a good idea, specifically considering that there are also enemies spread throughout this area that you receive no healing beforehand, and even more so, you fought a bunch of enemies before entering this area. Half-Life across all the games had one part where you had to take mandatory damage, and it was that giant cooled storage area. However, in this part you are first locked into a safe room alongside a health charger. This is the only way to set something like this up. So yeah, I didn't get this part in Poke646 at all. Perhaps I'm missing something, which let me know in the comments if I did. After sneaking around a couple explosives we find a note. This node changes everything. We find out about the true plan of Poke646. The Poke646 scientists have previously flown a spaceship over to Zen. If this makes sense, the half-life law is something we will be discussing later in the lore discussion. They planted explosives in Zen that would basically completely obliterate the entirety of it. The 4 generators do not exist close to the portals. They instead would be used to detonate these explosives. The person writing this note also states how the Zen creatures don't deserve this treatment. They were simply living a peaceful life until they were sucked into our world through a portal against their will. It's only natural that they fight us. So now our mission has changed. This person has left behind a code to a teleporter to Zen. We teleport there and parkour our way to the explosive charge. We see this weird robot. I mean, it looks really cool. I just don't fully get why it's there. It does however have unique attacks, like charging up an explosive shot to wherever the player is heading, which can be hard to dodge. We have to dodge and jump past it and then eventually disable the explosives, also killing the robot. We get a beautiful ending text alongside a cutscene of a character sitting there. Now I understand why the troops were so keen on hunting me down. I already knew too much. Dr. Fuller tried his best to save me, but after all, he's on their side and has always been. Here I sit, betrayed by everyone and stranded on a foreign world without any possibility to get back. Are they going to send a rescue ship? I shouldn't bet on that. I managed to destroy their most advanced technology, crossed all their attempts to eliminate Zen, and I know way too much about their dirty plans. I should start to feel familiar with this world. Looks as if it'll become my new home. Goodbye world, welcome Zen. We have done the right thing, but must now pay the price of probably dying in Zen. This might be seen as an odd choice, but before I get into my review of this mod, I will first get into the sequel. It is a lot shorter than the first game, so buckle in. It starts off with basically the same cutscene that the first game ended with. This time the text has changed. At the break of dawn, Damien Reeves was just a low-level technician in the Poke646 organization. But over the course of one terrifying day, he became so much more. A fighter, a savior. Some would even call him a hero. The odds were not in his favor though. Now he finds himself stranded on the Zen border world. Betrayed by his former boss Dr. Sebastian Fuller, and left behind by everyone at Poke646. The scene switches to inside the spaceship alongside the text. Being the excellent technician he is, Damien manages to create a stable teleporter signal in an abandoned Poke646 space shuttle left behind on the asteroid, like him. Damien doesn't know who he can trust anymore. He can't tell right from wrong. He doesn't even know where this teleporter might take him, but there's one thing he knows. Revenge is a dish best served cold. We then start in the spaceship area. It's an orbital station on Earth. We are now out for revenge. This area looks pretty cool and it also has custom voice acting for the intercom voice of the space station.
Welcome aboard the Poke646 Orbital Research Labs.
Laptops are now placed around, which are the sequel's version of the IUICs. We find a pipe once again and solve a few puzzles. We then find a new weapon not seen in the first part, alongside a few mysteriously placed dead bodies. The P-21. It's pretty cool. It looks slightly glitched due to my FOV, but don't worry about it. Some soldiers are also still alive here, which I wonder what happened here. There isn't really any clean-cut explanation for this. We venture through the space station and solve puzzles and try to find the way forward. What I simply must criticize, and is one of the cornerstones of bad game design, and true fans of this channel will have heard this rant a couple of times, is the player being forced to look up. This happens on multiple occasions in this mod. Now in theory this doesn't sound too bad, but trust me and years of playtesting in 3D gaming, no player looks up. Looking up should be reserved for extra loot or Easter eggs. To get the player to look up, you need to give them as much support as you possibly can. Arrows drawn on the wall, lights, sparks or something similar coming off that area, sounds or a hint system. Which is a cheap out by the way. A ton of games fail at this, and often, if you find yourself stuck in a puzzle in a Half-Life mod, the answer is looking up. It's simply just not in human nature to do this, it seems. So yeah, if you ever find yourself designing a game, try to avoid the player having to look up at all costs. Alternatively, add at least 3 of the 5 indications I gave you earlier. This mod sadly fails badly at this and does this a few times. On a more positive note, the detail work of these areas is absolutely unbelievable. This mod looks incredible and really unique. It feels just slightly changed from the first game, which is exactly what a sequel should be aiming for. It keeps things fresh. We then find files about us being a fugitive, which confirms that the military was looking for us for knowing too much. We find a laptop of Captain Simon Finch, seemingly a very high-up personnel of Poke646. He called for a meeting of only very high-level staff for a highly confidential plan. Now at this point, I wasn't sure if these were past notes about the plans to blow up Zen, but I'll let you know now that these are new plans. Also, look at this modeling work. How incredible is this? Especially for a Gold Source mod. This is just the model maker flexing, which I absolutely can't get enough of. We then find a teleporter that will take us straight to Nation City. We take one nice look at Earth, which looks to have a Fortnite map as its only piece of land, and then jump into the teleporter. We teleport around a bit, which actually shows us cut maps of Counter-Strike Condition 0, DE Dehab and DE Vostok. A really cool reference. We then arrive back in Nation City. It looks just like it did in the first part, even though these are entirely new areas. Now obviously I can't claim to be a day one player. I played both of these mods in a singular day. I can't help but imagine the excitement of a Poke646 fan though. Revisiting an area you last saw 5 years ago must be really great, especially such a unique one. We also see another Kingpin. It won't have any more relevance, but I do find it interesting. We then learn that Dr. Fuller is hiding in the bunker we started the third generator at in the first game. On our way there, we fight a Gonarch. We fight against a lot of Zen creatures in the military as we make our way to the library bunker. These areas are, again, on par with the first part. It's really great level design. We find a new laptop on which we learn that Dr. Fuller is no longer in the bunker. The bunker has been overrun by Zen creatures and is being taken to their astrolabs via a tram system. We then take an elevator down to the bunker and arrive at the same place we were at in the first game. It's so cool they're showing this place again. We find a ton of ammo in this room, which you know shit is about to go down when you find this much ammo. By the way, up to this point we have found the entire arsenal this game will give us, which consists of the pipe, P21, the crossbow, the shotgun and dynamite. No nail guns, which it's completely lost on me why the developers thought this was a good choice. We then take a train ride to the astrolabs of Poke646, which was fun. The astrolabs also look great. We get a unique gameplay element here. There is a camera that looks for motion to enable turrets. You can simply shoot the camera to avoid them, which I thought was neat. Nothing too new, but neat. We then find out what the super secret confidential plan is. The plan is to nuke the city and deal with the collateral later, which is estimated to be about 250,000 people. Seems like a bit of a flawed plan to me, which the protagonist seems to agree with. We venture further around the lab and see this cool teleporter effect. It isn't that important to the story or gameplay, but it looks so damn cool. We find laptops in which people try to reach their family in Nation City, urging them to escape quickly. A nice bit of world building. We eventually reach the final boss fight, which is a giant robot that went pretty underused in the first game. We quickly manage to take him down and foil the plans to nuke the city. We do this by detonating the nuke detonators early, right in the hands of the higher-ups that were involved in this conspiracy. We now get the ending cutscene. 3 weeks later, we receive a letter by the Poke646 Vice President. They are incredibly grateful for our help, even if our methods may be questionable. They also proposed us for a promotion. Someone from the administration should contact us soon. And I'm gonna leave you up to guess who this administrator is. Yep, it's him, the G-Man. It's a really cool ending, tying in the game a little more to the story of Half-Life. So now, let's get into some quick lore discussion before I review both games. Now for anyone who has watched my 1187 video, it seems like a controversial question as to when the Common Invasion happened exactly. Mark Laidlaw said it was only days, which is contradicted by some other points though. For more detail, watch my video on 1187. But for now, let's go with that the Common Invasion not having happened yet, 13 months after the Black Mesa incident, seems plausible enough. Once this is assumed, most of this makes sense. It could very well be the case that there used to be a government agency that dealt with the fallout of the Zen invasion. Now there is one point I'm unsure what to think of, and that is the fact that apparently the Poke646 spaceship flew to Zen. I'm simply not sure if that's a thing. Now you can, for the sake of wanting this mod to be canon, just assume they went through some huge portal, but I don't think this is what they meant. It seems like according to this lore, Zen is a place somewhere in our galaxy/universe that you can physically go to without the need of portals. I don't think that's how it works. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be a different dimension, but let me know your thoughts in the comments. So yeah, that's a bit of a questionable aspect of the lore. There is also the aspect of the Poke646 laboratories owning a perfect portal similar to those of Portal 1 and 2. But seeing as both games came out before the release of any portal entry, this is not the fault of the developers. But it does question why this facility wasn't targeted by the Combine in Half-Life 2 later on, seeing as they were really interested in teleportation. I'm also not sure if there wasn't at least some kind of evil intent of the Zen aliens as stated by that one letter near the end of the first mod. It's making a pretty big assumption in the Half-Life lore, but I also don't see anything speaking against it really. I personally think it's fine. So yeah, it might be a bit of a stretch to call this one lore friendly. It's more like an alternative lore, but if you really want to bend the rules a bit, you could theoretically call this mod canon to the Half-Life universe. And yes, I know canon is not canon in Valve's words, but let's not get into that. Now for my review. Taking a look at Poke646, it's an absolutely groundbreaking mod. Unique aesthetics in every way. Tons of new textures and models and a look that I've not yet seen in another mod. The unique weapons, even if they are simply reskins, are really fun and memorable. The level design has a few very weird decisions, but it was just like one of the 30 awesome levels this mod has. I also really like the fact that it went out of its way to include all Zen aliens in the mod save for the Gonarch, which we then got to see in the sequel. The story it tells is interesting and intriguing, featuring a couple of twists as well. I also really like the ending text for some reason. It was pretty beautiful. Sacrificing yourself to save a species that has done nothing but harm to you and humanity, simply because you know better, is really beautiful and thought-provoking. I also didn't mind the cutscenes. Sure, in true Half-Life fashion it is always nice to try and tell stuff through the perspective of the player. But I forgive mods that include a beginning and ending cutscene generally. Particularly it makes it easier when you don't have a G-Man showing you stuff, which was Half-Life 2's way of doing it. It is definitely no stretch to call this one of the best Half-Life mods ever made. A clear 10 out of 10 from me. Now for the sequel, Poke646 Vendetta. Now to immediately note, there are so many mods that were left abandoned back in the day. be it 1187, human error or what have you. So to see this mod actually getting a sequel is nice. I personally love seeing fan-favorite protagonists getting a continuation, even if only in form of a shorter mod. I think Vendetta overall manages to keep up the most important points Poke646 stood for. Unique weapons, unique art style, unique theme and a unique take on the story. I do think it suffers a bit in more general elements, like for example the storytelling. I generally think the story is fine. It takes the more deep ending of the first part and switches it for a more happy one in the sequel, which I'm sure not everyone is a fan of, but I like it. And the aspect of coming back to foil another evil plan of conspiratorial Poke646 members is pretty similar to the story of the first part. I do think the first one keeps its goals more clear throughout and does so through more clear text. The IUICs where you directly communicated with someone instructing you obviously helped and couldn't be reintroduced really in the sequel, which only left them with environmental storytelling in the form of text found on laptops and similar. Having to extract information out of these texts is harder to do though. Especially when talking about the same corporation, Poke646, but talking about different members of it forming a secret team. I didn't really know if Poke646 were the good or bad guys up until the finale. I also didn't really understand the whole detonator thing really. Why did they keep charged detonators in the conference room? Also, were truly all of them in there? Now I do give mods the benefit of the doubt in all cases really, though usually the player shouldn't even be in the place where you have to give games the benefit of the doubt in the first place. The story should be clear-cut and just something that adds reason to gameplay, which it did, but it was unclear for the most part. All this being said, I still think it's a very nice sequel and is still better than very most mods out there, and that revisiting old areas is simply I especially enjoy. So overall, if I had to give this mod a rating out of 10, it would be a solid 9 out of 10. It could have been a bit better, but it does a fine enough job at continuing the story of the protagonist Damian Reeves, and does so with gameplay and looks that every fan of the first mod will enjoy. That's everything about Poke646 there is to know I think. Be sure to check it out. Also remember to join the Discord. Otherwise, thank you for watching.